Americans are finally starting to feel better about the economy, invigorating Vice President Kamala Harris's pitch for the presidency as she narrows her Republican opponent's longtime lead on an issue that is foremost on voters' minds. A Fox News poll this month, for example, found that 51% of registered voters favor Trump on the economy, compared with 46% who favor Harris. That's compared with the 15% point advantage Trump had over Biden in March. And although voters will or still favor Trump over Harris on handling the economy, his advantage has dropped dramatically in recent weeks. And Marcellus Williams, who spent more than 2 decades on Missouri's death row, convicted of a 1998 murder that he said he did not commit, died by lethal injection last night after a lengthy and complex effort to exonerate him based on DNA testing issues. Now, it's important to note that the U.S. Supreme Court's 3 liberal members, Justices Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, disagreed with the Supreme Court's refusal to stay Williams's execution, stating that they would have granted the request to halt the execution. And a federal judge yesterday granted prosecutors' request to file up to a 180-page legal brief this week, arguing that Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election should not be immune from criminal prosecution. The court rejected Trump's claims that its timing was unfair or politically motivated, with the election fast approaching. And conspiracy theorist Alex Jones' InfoWars media platform and its assets will be sold off piece by piece in auctions this fall to help pay the more than $1 billion he owes to relatives of victims of the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. Now, U.S. District Court Judge Christopher Lopez in Houston said during a hearing yesterday that he will approve the auctions that will start in November. And the leader of a Haitian nonprofit community group filed criminal charges against Trump and J.D. Vance over false claims they made about Haitian immigrants eating local pets in Springfield, Ohio. And Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York today said that the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, should resign. She is the first and most prominent Democrat to call for his ouster. Now, this is amid federal corruption investigations involving key members of Eric Adams' mayoral administration. And the House today passed a short-term spending bill to avert a government shutdown. And this came just ahead of the November elections, punting a bigger funding fight to the end of the year. Republican Speaker Mike Johnson again had to turn to Democrats to supply the bulk of the votes needed to keep federal funding flowing through December 20th. This is the news of the day, and this is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. This is, because this is hour 2, this is the hour where we go a little deeper, where we dig behind those headlines and bring you those stories that people are talking about. Well, there's been a lot of news stories about the incredible endorsements and the many endorsements that Vice President Kamala Harris has received from all sectors of our economy, from tech executives in Silicon Valley, from former administration workers under Republican presidents, like folks who used to work for Ronald Reagan and Mitt Romney and Mitt Romney when he ran for president, he wasn't president, but George Bush. There's just been a host of prominent Republicans who have endorsed Kamala Harris. There's been obviously a host of civil rights organizations, a host of leaders throughout this country who have come forward to say that she is the best person to be president. That includes a lot of environmental justice groups also that have given their sign of approval to the vice president. However, there is a corner of the progressive part of the Democratic Party that is not fully on board with the vice president. And many of these individuals and groups are from her own state of California. In fact, California environmental justice groups have mostly stayed quiet on VP Harris and her campaign for presidency even as she has leaned into, on the campaign trail, her work addressing pollution in overburdened communities. She's been drawing a contrast to where she stands on climate justice issues with respect to drawing a contrast between where she stands and where Donald Trump stands on the same issues. Now, national environmental groups have praised VP Harris's record. They've praised her for the creation of one of the first environmental justice investigation units as San Francisco's district attorney. And they have praised her for sponsoring a Green New Deal bill as senator. And they've also given her a lot of praise for the work that she's done around lead pipe removal as she has been serving as the vice president. So if these national environmental groups are praising the vice president, if they are giving full-throated endorsements of her work, if they are drawing clear distinctions between what she has done around the climate and particularly pollution versus what Donald Trump has done, why are groups, environmental groups, 501c4 advocacy groups in her own state withholding their endorsement of the vice president? And some of these groups include California Environmental Justice Alliance, Asian Pacific Environmental Network, and Communities for a Better Environment. These groups, amongst others, have been silent, and they have not joined with other national organizations to endorse the vice president. Well, Blanca Burgert, she is a reporter for Politico. She did a deep dive on these environmental justice groups in the state of California, interviewed them, did some research, and wrote an interesting article about why California-based environmental justice groups are not falling in line and giving the vice president due credit for the work that she's done on important environmental issues. The reporter who has done this great work, written this great article, is going to join me when we come forward to help us make sense of what's happening with these California environmental justice groups. Stay with us when we come forward.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580. Tabitha Smiley's new book, The Covenant with Black America, 20 years later, is now on sale everywhere. This classic text shot to #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list almost 2 decades ago. If you have the original book, you will surely want to get this 20th anniversary edition. With powerful new contributions from today's leading voices, this 20th anniversary edition presents a compelling blend of historical insights and contemporary urgency in this critical and unprecedented election year. Get your copy of The Covenant with Black America 20 years later today.
Whoa, it's you, the Capital One Bank guy.
That's what they call me.
Mind if I get a selfie?
Yeah, sure thing. Say no fees or minimums on your Capital One checking account.
Wow, that's a keeper. So, where are you heading?
I'm off to spread the good news that Capital One helps people keep more money in their wallet with no overdraft fees.
Oh, you're the best Capital One Bank guy.
Hey, mind if I get a selfie?
Sure.
Say, Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One NA, member FDIC.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
When you're rolling Charmin Ultra Soft on the party, less is more, so roll it back, everybody. Charmin's irresistibly soft and hella nice. The grip is always soft. It's our party vibe. It's cushioning things so our cheeks feel fine. So what? Everybody wanna touch the sky.
Charmin Ultra Soft is irresistibly soft and more absorbent, so you can use less. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment through the arts. Tia Chucha Central Cultural is on a mission to transform community in the Northeast San Fernando Valley and beyond through ancestral knowledge, the arts, literacy, and creative engagement. The Northeast San Fernando Valley has a population of about 500,000, the size of the city of Oakland, yet it has no bookstores, art galleries, or full-fledged cultural spaces until Tia Chuchas opened its doors in 2001. Founded by renowned poet and activist Luis Rodriguez, Tia Chuchas Cultural Center provides a year-round free or low-cost arts and literacy bilingual intergenerational programming in mural painting, music, dance, writing, visual arts, healing art sessions, and healing talking circles. Activities also include Mexica, Aztec dance, indigenous cosmology, philosophy, and 2 weekly open mic nights, one in Spanish, the other in English. In addition, they host author readings, film screenings, and art exhibits. To express yourself, heal yourself, attend an event, or volunteer, please visit www.tiachucha.org. That's TIACHUCHA.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We're back, and in this hour, we're talking environmental justice as well as disinformation. My first guest is Blanca Burgert. She is a reporter with Politico, and she's out with a new piece about why environmental justice groups in the state of California, Kamala Harris's home state, have not endorsed her in the same way that national environmental groups have. Welcome to the show, Blanca, and thank you for your great reporting on this issue. It seems like it would be a relatively simple answer for these environmental groups in the state of California, those that have worked with Kamala Harris personally, those that know her track record on environmental justice issues when she was San Francisco's district attorney, as well as when she was acting as a U.S. senator, where she was serving, I shouldn't say acting, but serving as U.S. senator for the state of California. So what is your reporting telling us about why these groups are withholding their endorsement?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me. So first, I just want to say and be very clear that all around the country and in California and in the California environmental justice movement that I was reporting on, that article on, there's recognition of Kamala Harris's strong environmental justice record in the state and as VP, and we can get into that later if you want to. But lots of environmental justice groups or people in the movement in their individual capacity have touted her strong record and spoken about how she would be leagues and away better from the alternative being Donald Trump. So this is really about the sort of formal on the record statements and endorsements that EJ groups can give. Specifically in not all of them have this right tax status that allows them to do that, but specifically California Environmental Justice Alliance, Asian Pacific Environmental Network, and Communities for a Better Environment, as for example, ones that could do an endorsement have stayed quiet and not put out a formal.
So you're saying it's not that they don't support her, but because of their tax status, they can't give an endorsement?
So the ones I just listed can give an endorsement. But those are examples of ones that can. Many of the smaller ones don't have the 501c4 advocacy arm that would allow them to. So that's, I'm just saying, for a subset of groups, they cannot endorse a candidate.
Okay, but those that have the advocacy arm, the 501c4 in California, have those groups endorsed her?
No. So the main ones have not.
Okay.
Yet.
What's the reasoning?
So right. So there's a couple of reasons that they've given. I think a big one is that it just is a long process to put out an endorsement. Some of these, like the California Environmental Justice Alliance, for example, have lots of member organizations that they have to get, buy-in. Others said, that they are, they're state-focused groups. They don't have the capacity. They don't always have the level of resources to weigh in on federal races. And in the past, they haven't, which, doesn't prevent them still from, putting out a statement or talking about her. But that's just one of the reasons that they've said, is that that's not really their focus. But then, for the ones that would and that could, something that came up in my reporting as part of the deliberations that they're going through as they kind of figure out how to whether to endorse her or what to say about her, was that there were members that had apprehension about parts of her record that were less environmental justice specific, but as the environmental justice movement sees that sees environmental justice as connected to lots of other issues like police violence against Black and brown communities, or Israel, the genocide in Gaza, or housing. There were pieces of her record that gave them pause and perhaps more reason for deliberation.
Do you anticipate, based on your interviews with these groups, that they will eventually endorse, or you think they'll just sit it out?
That's a really good question. And it's hard because, they're not really wanting to share so much yet about what, they're thinking. I know one of the groups has said that they will be putting out a letter soon. So I don't know exactly what would be in that. And, I know that part of this also, right, is that Kamala Harris has not really, even though she has this great EJ record, she hasn't put out, very much in the way of climate policy and EJ policy as part of her campaign. So I know that some of them are also engaging with her and working with her. Someone I interviewed back when I was reporting this in July said that they would maybe be looking for some specific commitments from her. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of environmental groups that, have not even, specifically to her environmental record or her environmental more recent statements around fracking and drilling have, taken issues with that, but still endorsed her because they recognize the alternative Donald Trump. So I'm not sure exactly what we'll see with these groups, but.
Well, thank you so much for your reporting. We're obviously going to follow this story. Obviously is that the election is around the corner. So if any group is going to endorse her and they want that endorsement to have any meaning, sooner rather than later, they make themselves pretty irrelevant if they don't weigh in on one of the most consequential elections of our time. And as you've said, there is no comparison and no candidate is perfect on all issues. But as it relates to environmental justice, Kamala Harris's record is very, very clear that she would be the superior candidate to protect our environment, to further the work of environmental justice advocates around this country. Thank you so much, Blanca, for your reporting, and thank you for joining me today. All right, you probably have seen the backlash on social media towards Janet Jackson. Janet's so beloved by so many across different communities all over this country, really all over this world. But lately, Janet Jackson landed in some hot water when giving an interview to the BBC about something that was pretty innocuous, i.e. her concert tour in Europe. Somehow the conversation veered into political territory, and the question was asked about Kamala Harris and her support for Kamala Harris. And Janet Jackson made what some, particularly in the Black community, to believe to be a very odd statement. She said she heard that she wasn't Black. Now, who have we heard say that before? Here to help us make sense of what Janet Jackson may have been thinking, why she made such a statement, and what the backlash has been, and what it could mean long-term for Janet Jackson and the implications for this campaign, is Professor Andre Brock. He is our resident social media expert, and we knew once this election heated up and the closer we got to election day, we would be battling so much disinformation on the internet. So welcome back, Professor Brock. Let me start with your initial reaction when you heard the comment by Janet Jackson.
I'm a longtime Jackson fan, all of them, including Tito Toriano, rest in peace. But I wasn't as surprised as many people seem to be, in part because she's a Gen Xer. And not only is she Gen X, she's been insulated and isolated from mainstream American culture.
Well, let me stop you. Let's start with the Gen X. What does that have to do with anything? So, and tell people how old Gen Xers are, because Janet Jackson is no baby.
No, Janet is 60. Gen X.
So is she an Xer or is she a baby boomer?
She's right on the cusp. So Gen X is popularly argued for starting around 65, right? And so she's right on the cusp.
Wait, Professor.
Don't get off.
Gen X is up to 65 years old?
Huh? No, 1965.
Oh, 19. Okay. Okay. I'm clear. I was like, what? Okay. So Gen Xers, 1965. After that, you're a baby boomer. Okay. So she's a Gen Xer. So, okay, go ahead.
So some of the things that have come up in social media research is where people get their information from. And many Gen Xers, there's almost kind of even split between those of us who entered into computer-oriented industries early and those of us who never had to. Janet is one of those who's never had to. Any information she's had to access has always been filtered through intermediaries, whether it's personal assistants or whatever. It turns out, and I'm pulling this information not from my research, but from trusted people I follow, like Naima Cochran, who's a professor at NYU and also runs Music Sermon, is that Janet lives with her brother Randy. And they live in London. And Randy is a MAGA truther. Make America Great Again.
Randy Jackson is a MAGA.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
But
they live in London and they don't vote in the US, presumably.
Right. And so when you put these things together, they're not really on social media like that. They're getting their news from people who may be extremely online, but are immersed in a different ideology. Then what she said is not really all that surprising. The uptake of it for me, though, is that we are long past the moment where we should be getting our political information or inspiration from celebrities. I'm old enough to remember during 9/11, CNN quickly cut to Ja Rule to ask him what he was thinking about the fact that the towers were collapsing on screen while he was giving commentary. I'm like, why would you talk to Ja Rule? Right. And so Janet is an international pop star. She's, well acclaimed for being one of the saner members of her clan. Right. But at the same time, anything Jackson or any other celebrity of that age says about politics, I take it with a grain of salt.
Do you know? Well, a couple of questions I have for you may not know, but I'm just curious. When did Randy and Janet start living out of the U.S. and when did Randy become, a Trumper?
So the scant information I have on Randy is right around 2016. And there's definitely a connection between celebrities who could be considered ego-driven, but also people who are very much invested in the idea that they are somehow above the common travails of everyday people and want to protect their income, their wealth from those people. And I think Jackson probably seems to have fallen right into that category. He's been close with Trump for some time. When did Janet move to London? I'm not sure, perhaps after her divorce. But the disconnect doesn't really faze me as much as it seems to bother other people. The thing.
Let me ask you this about Randy. If you said you think around 2016, Randy became, immersed in MAGA culture. Has he ever been public, like out supporting Donald Trump at rallies, videos, anything of that nature?
I can't attest to whether he's been at rallies, but there are a number of photographs of him and Donald Trump piled up together at certain events.
Okay. And what about Lil Wayne? This is off topic for a minute, but he keeps coming up as a name that is supporting Donald Trump. But I was at the DNC and people who watched the DNC saw Lil Wayne come out for the state of Georgia in that historic roll call on Tuesday night of the convention. So to your knowledge, is Lil Wayne, was a Trumper, now is supporting Kamala Harris, or what's going on with that?
I'm going to be bold and say, I don't know. I don't want to put my foot in it and then people come after me on the internet for talking noise. So I honestly don't know. I was surprised to see him. I'm not gonna lie, I was surprised to see him at the DMC. I was happy to see him, but in my opinion, our elder statesmen of hip hop, and I definitely count Wayne in that, have definitely tilted more towards the conservative side of the spectrum. For just in Atlanta alone, we can talk about Killer Mike. Right. And on the West Coast, we could talk about Ice Cube. There seems to be some connection. And this was a movement that started in the mid 2010s, where a lot of hip hop, senior hip hop artists said they were new blacks. Racism had never really affected them. They hated that black people were using racism as an excuse. All you had to do is get out and hustle. And many of these same celebrities these hip hop artists are absolutely in that same mold.
Oh my. Maybe I missed that. Thank God I did. There was a movement in the hip hop industry of older meaning, been in the industry a long time, folks saying racism is over, is dead, that black folks are just whining and complaining, we're just lazy.
Absolutely.
That really happened?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. Ooh, okay, that's deep. What about Snoop? Because his name comes up a lot. I hear people say he's also with Donald Trump, but I don't know if I haven't seen anything public to suggest that or to support that. Have you?
Snoop is a fascinating test case because he has managed to convert himself into the biggest of brands, considering, this is a man who was on trial for murder, who has done jail time and all these other things. And he has managed to convert himself into a spokesperson for the biggest national event in the world, the Olympics. And so he has a fantastic PR team. He has a fantastic, whoever's doing his public relations knows their business. Snoop does not get involved on those levels to talk about politics or anything else. The closest he came to being political was showing up on stage with Dr. Dre at the Super Bowl last year before, right? And other than that, he stays out of that business.
So anyone who professes to say that he's a Trumper doesn't really probably know what they're talking about. It's probably a rumor.
I don't think they do. And to be clear, I don't follow him super closely, but I also know that given his public profile right now, if he had come out and declared himself as a Trumper, Black Twitter would be on his neck, right? They would.
Yes, and Donald Trump would be promoting it everywhere that he could. So,
right.
And that's the thing I'm seeing about Lil Wayne. When people say that, the Dems were promoting Lil Wayne and his appearance at the DNC. And I haven't seen Donald Trump try to attach himself to Lil Wayne in the way that he's attached himself to Kanye West. Correct. So the folks that have come out for Donald Trump, he's usually pretty aggressive in, letting the public know, even, making artificial intelligence photos of Taylor Swift supporting him. So even those people who are not supporting him, he often will lie and claim that they are. When we come forward, I want to talk about where we are. We're like 40 days or less from this election, and the misinformation, the disinformation, the lies are heating up. Stay with us. KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. Vice President Kamala Harris says her economic plan will build the middle class if she becomes president. She spoke about her plan for the economy at a campaign event in Pittsburgh. Harris contrasted her plan to former President Trump's, saying for him, the economy works best if it works for those who own the big skyscrapers, not for the people who build them. This marked the vice president's 8th visit to the battleground state since she launched her campaign in July. Prison officials in Missouri say convicted murderer Marcellus Williams has been executed. Williams, who was Black, was put to death by lethal injection Tuesday evening, shortly after the U.S. Supreme Court denied his request for a stay of execution. The 55-year-old Williams was found guilty in the 1998 stabbing death of newspaper reporter Felicia Gale. Williams spent more than 2 decades on Missouri's death row and had proclaimed his innocence until the end. The prosecutor's office that convicted him and the victim's family were among those who opposed his execution. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network.
In Mid-City, a stalled vehicle at the 10 eastbound after Arlington. That right lane is blocked and it's causing heavy traffic from 20th. It's about an hour delay. In Pasadena, slow traffic at the 210 eastbound between the 134 and Citrus, and that's backed up 35 minutes. In East LA, an accident on the right shoulder at the 710 southbound before the 60. Traffic is slow from Floral. It's about a 10-minute delay. In Carson, watch out for a bumper in the left lane at the 405 northbound at Carson. That's causing slow traffic from Bolsa Chica. It's about a 25-minute delay.
Bank of America has powerful digital solutions for local and global businesses, so you can make every move matter. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. Bank of America N.A. Copyright 2024.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The time may have come for people to change the status of Clippers forward Kawhi Leonard from one of the NBA's top stars to damaged goods. It may sound harsh, but here we are again. When the Clippers announced Tuesday that Kawhi's right knee still has inflammation and that he will not be able to practice next week in training camp, a lot of people are coming to the conclusion that Kawhi is no longer a healthy player. There are concerns he won't be ready for the season opener on October 23rd. Kawhi was sent home from Vegas in July after 3 days of working out with the U.S. Olympic team. and that was 3 months after the Clippers season had ended. Kawhi missed the final 8 games of the regular season and the last 3 games in the first round of the playoffs against Dallas. From 2017 to 2023, Kawhi missed 242 games, mainly because of his knee. How much longer will Clippers fans support a part-time player? No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, y'all, come on. Pick up the drums.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah,
gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need.
Hey.
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck B. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it. Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power. Fight the power.
Climate justice, climate equity, climate resilience. By any other name, we demand environmental justice in 2024 and beyond. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
This is 60.
And that chill in the air means one thing. It's truck season!
Just 5 more minutes.
No snoozing. You've got so much to do. So do it all in a Chevy Colorado or Silverado, including the HD or class-leading 440-mile range of the Silverado EV.
Wait, what? Are you talking?
Yes! Picture it. Work, play, hauling gear, off-roading. A Chevy truck can take whatever you can throw at it, including tailgating in an actual tailgate!
I mean, homecoming is just around the corner. Oh, and showing up in a new truck.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Get things done and look good doing it.
Okay, I'm up. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Without offering me a ride? That's cold.
Head to your local Chevy dealer and get 1.9% financing on all 2024 Silverado 1500 and Colorado pickups when you finance with GM Financial. Chevrolet, together, let's drive.
1.9% APR for 36 months. Monthly payment is $28.60 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment 24.5%. Plus finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available at least in some of the offers. Taking retail delivery by 9/30/20.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm back, and Professor Andre Brock is joining us. He is a professor of media and communication at Georgia Institute of Technology. All right, Professor Brock, thank you for helping us understand where Janet Jackson may have been coming from. The fact that she goes with her brother Randy, the fact that Randy is very much in the Trump world, has immersed himself in the MAGA culture. So he probably told her, or she may have been watching Fox News and heard Donald Trump say Kamala Harris isn't black. We haven't heard before this notion that her father was white, but I'm not sure where that rumor came from. But there's so many rumors. One thing that's starting to really bother me is Donald Trump is starting to take credit for things that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have done in this term of their administration. And the way it's being reported on in the news is it's like they're just reporting out what he said. And again, if you're just reading the paper and you heard that Donald Trump said he is responsible for $35 caps on insulin, or he's responsible for the lowest black unemployment rate in history, those seem like truths being told by a candidate. Now, later, you'll get a fact-checking article, or later, or someplace in a different part of that paper, you'll get a story that may tell you, that these are lies. They don't call them lies. So I'm getting very concerned about how extreme Donald Trump lies are becoming, because he's going to a whole nother level. I mean, lying about things that literally you can fact check in 3 seconds or less. What do you make of this?
So one of my favorite journalist follows called this sane washing, where he says things that are completely unhinged. If you actually listen to the transcript of his talks, and that he sounds like someone who has a very tenuous grasp on reality and has trouble even stringing words together in a sentence. And then the Washington Post, the New York Times, other outlets will then report it as if he said something coherent. And so that's a large part of it. Like if I were to talk about any of this misinformation, I would argue that many of our mainstream news outlets are contributing to the idea that this is actually a close race with two people who have similar outlooks on politics and governance. And it's clearly not true. But they do a lot of work to convince us that Donald Trump is actually a coherent, legible candidate, when the evidence every day is mounting that he is not.
And it's so funny that you say that, Professor Brock, because when Joe Biden, had his slip up, had his, issues on that debate stage, that became the biggest news ever for legacy media. And even today, it's kind of funny because one of my regular contributors in the first hour said he was concerned about Joe Biden getting out talking. He was on The View today saying, he's known for stumbling. But Donald Trump, as you just said, is fumbling and stumbling his way through every speech that he gives. But it gets reported as if it's coherent. Kamala Harris is giving a speech on economic policy. Donald Trump is giving a speech on economic policy. They make them equal. And even my contributor is now worried that Joe Biden can't do an interview on The View. The man's been giving interviews for the last 60 years of his life. But somehow it's legitimate for Donald Trump to go out and give interviews, do rallies. So even with those who are anti Donald Trump, who know the difference between his policies and hers, it's just interesting how that has seeped into the psyche, even of those who know the difference.
Yeah. And it's one of the few remaining values that I argue for social media, is that social media, if you have your feeds tuned correctly, will at least provide you with a clearer view of exactly what's going on in the ways that each candidate is being upheld. And so if you remember recently, Kamala was being called out because they said certain folks said they thought she was code switching to talk to an all Black audience. And they're like, well, why is she all of a sudden talking like this? Didn't she go to
J.D. Vance criticized her, said she had a fake accent.
Correct. Right. And so nobody has ever called Donald Trump out on his slurring, his affect, or anything else. And again, it's thank God for certain people who are still on social media and invested in showing us that there is a possibility to view the news as it should be reported, and not in the horse race mode or the sane washing that's happening with so many papers who we used to consider to be papers of record, and just have no interest in promoting or even presenting Donald Trump as someone who's unworthy of the office.
But yet they jumped on Joe Biden to the point where, the good news is Kamala Harris is polling so much ahead of Biden, and the enthusiasm and the support that she's getting is different, and signaling that it probably was time for Biden to step aside. But still, the treatment of his one appearance versus the repeated treatment of the repeated statements, incoherent statements that Donald Trump makes, which are legitimized. And I'm glad to hear you say there are folks who listen to those rallies, speeches, go to those rallies, and then compare how they get reported out. Because those of us who don't go, who have never been, and that was brilliant of Kamala Harris saying, I'm inviting you to attend one of them to see what she said is the boredom, the exhaustion, the people leaving early. We don't get any of that when it gets reported.
No, the media news cycle, particularly around the politics, has definitely devolved into a horse race mode. And each of these mainstream news outlets is invested in the fact that Donald Trump is newsworthy every time he opens his mouth, right? They have to manufacture controversies for Kamala, right? But anytime Donald Trump says something, either they're covering for him or they report on something egregious that he said. So one of the things I saw most recently is that Donald Trump said at a rally that the audience was in love with him at the debate. There was no audience. at the debate.
Oh, that's a slip of the tongue. Okay, the audience. So people would walk away believing that, but yet you're right, there was no audience.
The other thing too is I think it's instructive to think about the role of Olivia Nuzzi, right, who was the reporter that recently got caught up with RFK, and she was instrumental. She was one of the loudest voices saying Biden needed to step down at the same time that she was having an affair with a candidate who had already signaled that he was willing to be a part of the Donald Trump administration, right? And because she was with the reputable outlet, you know, they've now asked her to step down, but the damage was done. She was, again, one of the loudest voices saying Biden was unfit for the presidency because he had a bad performance. But the instructive thing for me was Biden did a press conference the day after, sounded clear as crystal. Right? Yeah. Did multiple press conferences after that. He's gotten sharp. He's in that mode where he's only going to be here for a little bit longer. He don't care what he has to say. And to contrast the way that he is responding to how he was covered in those days before the Democratic switch up happened really shows you that the mainstream American press has played a hard role, a very powerful role in trying to convince us that this is somehow a race that is tilted in favor of the Republicans, not the Democrats.
I saw that speech that Biden gave the next day. He was at a union hall. It was, as you said, a incredibly coherent and powerful speech, and it didn't get a lot of attention, and it definitely didn't get the attention of contrasting that speech to that one quote unquote bad performance. Right. But I think what's interesting to me about this conversation, again, Dr. Brock, is how those of us, and I'm going to put myself in that category, how we have been gaslit and manipulated by the mainstream press, because we have bought into, and you heard a lot of Democrats, you heard a lot of Democratic donors, a lot of elected officials, they bought into that narrative that Joe Biden, now many had ulterior motives, but there was a constant chorus of Democrats buying into the narrative that Joe Biden was unfit, he was too old, he was, in decline. George Clooney became one of the biggest voices on that. But we don't see that same drumbeat when it comes to Donald Trump, and his decline has been normalized in a way, like you said, they create this dichotomy as if this is a choice between two equally qualified candidates, and it is not. That's so interesting. And how, again, the more interesting thing is not that they do it, it's the way that even liberal Democrats have bought into that narrative. And when we come forward, talking about Professor Andre Brock about disinformation and lies and how they're impacting this election. We are so close to November 5th. It's not even funny, unbelievable that we are where we are. And we know the lies by Donald Trump and the MAGA crowd are just going to intensify. What do we do to protect ourselves and to try to discern facts in this environment where Donald Trump has basically said the facts are whatever he says they are on any given day? Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580, when we come forward.
To Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
To help combat climate change, LADWP is helping neighborhoods have better access to electric vehicles by awarding nearly $130 million in EV rebates to customers just like you. From big savings on used EVs to building new charging plazas, LADWP is charging ahead to help all Angelenos experience the benefits of EVs. Get rebates of up to $4,000 for a used EV and $1,750 for a charger. Learn more at ladwp.com/EV. That's ladwp.com/EV. With reported hate crimes rising in recent years, California has responded through outreach efforts across state government and in collaboration with community-based organizations for the launch of CA versus Hate. This non-emergency, multilingual hate crime and incident reporting hotline provides an anonymous reporting option for victims and witnesses of hate acts, reported in 15 different languages through the online portal and in over 200 languages when calling the hotline. Report anonymously by calling 833-866-4283, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. or online at any time at cavshate.org. Hey, LA residents, it's planting season and the perfect time to get shade trees growing around your home. LADWP and City Plants are giving every resident up to 7 free trees. That's right, 7 free trees delivered right to your door. Trees are great for the environment, help improve air quality, and can help you save on your bill when you use less air conditioning to stay cool indoors. Learn more at ladwp.com/free trees. That's ladwp.com/free trees. October 2nd is California Clean Air Day. Go Metro for free and help cut down on pollution and traffic. It's our way of thanking you because every ride makes a difference. Let's clear the air together. Ready to go right now? Head to metro.net.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
All right, Professor Brock, it's hard to cut ties with your local news, with national news outlets, with cable news outlets. I know you talked a little earlier about using or finding a trusted messenger on social media, that some of those messengers are more reliable than what we see in the legacy media. How do you do that? How do you cut ties with a newspaper or media outlet that you've relied on for so long?
Social media provides some ways to work around that. Instead of following institutions, I follow journalists. I was really happy to see Soledad O'Brien come back on. I follow you. I follow Karen Hunter. I follow Roland Martin. I followed specifically Phil Lewis, right? There are a number of people who are still dedicated to providing, if not unbiased, at least contextually and culturally aware perspectives on the news that's happening, right? And so that's an important part. I think it's also important to realize that social media has kind of shifted our media landscape to where we will be presented with a clip that quickly goes viral that has often been cut to show a particular perspective or even camera angle to make someone look bad or look worse. Right. I very rarely see them where they make somebody look good. Right. Perhaps the only one I can think of is Jasmine Crockett, who you've had on as a guest. Right. But for most of the time, particularly for candidates that the newspapers and television networks don't favor, they find the worst possible clip that they can do. So the Biden debate with Trump, they showed that moment where he had a brain fart, as if nobody has ever had a brain fart. And then they amplified that into the storm, where they were saying he was not, but in the same time, in this same debate, that man was across the stage from him saying all kind of foolishness, and nobody brought that up, right? And so it's instructive to realize that social media does a lot of shaping of how we understand the way news is reported, right? And the best you can do is to not react immediately to the things that these news networks provide us on any social media outlet. And that includes TikTok, right? If you see a clip that immediately arouses you and enrages you and angers you, do your best to try to find that entire clip, right? To see how much of it has been snipped or shaped in order to present a certain viewpoint. Also, remember that these mainstream orgs are not in it for democracy. They're in it for ratings and money and engagement, right? And once you realize that, it changes your perspective on exactly what even news is anymore. Right. So much of news depends on us being having this catharsis, this rage moment, this anger moment, this frustration moment. And to be fair, the ways that the United States government has ignored what's going on in Palestine or enabled what's going on in Palestine has not helped. right? So anything that happens, people who would have normally at least been considering voting Democratic, and they see the Democrats doing something foolish. Like right now, Kamala's getting dragged because none of her policies specifically stated that they would intervene in election and state-sanctioned executions of convicted criminals, right?
Say that again. She's getting dragged because she has
Sorry.
not come out on.
So there's no way that any federal official, none in the executive branch, can intervene in any state criminal proceeding, particularly executions.
So like Marcellus Williams, that's the case.
Like Marcellus,
man
right? Exactly.
executed in Missouri last night. Folks are saying she should be talking about intervening in those executions.
Right. But the executive branch has no power to do that. Right.
I know, but okay, let's stop with that. That's a good example. So that rumor gets started by what? A Russian bot, an operative for Trump. Like, how does that get started? Like, because like, who even would think that a president can say to a Missouri State prison, Missouri State Correction Facility, you can't execute? The Supreme Court, with the 6-3 majority, could not stop his execution.
I'm not going to go so far as to say it's foreign actor misinformation, because we have enough folk in the states who are disaffected with our two-party system who are absolutely willing to say, this is my red line. I'm not going past. This is where I tap out. And I think that this entire enterprise is corrupt. And so it doesn't take someone in a Romanian troll farm or a bot that's generated from Saudi America. All it takes is somebody with a large enough online following to say, you know, this is just another example of how Democrats are just as bad as Republicans. And social media engagement algorithms will take people's agreement with that, because we're all frustrated, we're all angry, we're all miserable, and then elevate that to make it seem like that's how the entire country feels, right? And so it's
well, wait a minute, Dr. Brock. We're not all frustrated, we're not all miserable, because that's what Donald Trump said. All women, remember, he said we're all unhealthy, we're unhappy, we're anxious. And I was sitting there thinking, no, dude, I'm quite happy.
I mean, I appreciate that you're happy. I have been arguing all year that we're currently in a state of miserableism because we're being told that everything is normal and okay, and our checks don't go as far as they do, and gas is high, and eggs are high, and all these other things are going on. So I think many people who are not as privileged as I am are very much in a state of mind where they're just sick of the world as it is. They're sick of seeing death on their social media feeds. They're sick of hearing police get away with killing unarmed people, like the police shooting a man on the subway, shooting another police officer, and then the New York Times headline was there was violence on the subway.
No. I get your point. There are a lot of things that people are unhappy about, but the reason we have to be careful about language is because Donald Trump tries to paint this incredibly grim view of the world, and then tell us that only he can fix it, because he just told us on his social media platform that 4 years ago we were happy, as he's talking to women, that we were happy and healthy and optimistic, and now under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris we become these miserably depressed, anxious people, and if we elect him he will make us happy again. So we just have to be careful that we understand the limits of electoral politics.
Yes.
Donald Trump nor Kamala Harris are going to necessarily change your outview on the world. That's the work you and your inner self, your pastor, your priest, your rabbi, your somebody have to do. And we can't confuse or conflate how we feel, about our immediate environment with what is at stake in this election, which is saving our democracy. Because if we're unhappy now, a Donald Trump presidency, I don't know, we'll just send most people over the edge. It's going to be a complete disaster if he's elected. But before I let you go, I want to go back to Janet Jackson for a second. So after the mix-up with Janet Jackson, we had this guy who issued this so-called correction apology, and then we had another correction saying, no, that wasn't really a correction. There's been no apology. The Jackson family is mourning the death of their brother Tito. So based on what you've told us about Randy's politics and Randy and Janet's, close relationship as siblings, it's not likely that Janet Jackson is going to issue any kind of official apology. Is that probably accurate?
I would say that's pretty accurate, because she doesn't see what she said is wrong. She's got people who she loves and trusts telling her that this is how the world moves, and that woman's father is not black, and so she's not going to change that simply because she got called out on it. The idea that somebody even was able to get into her socials and issue that kind of apology and immediately had it taken down says a lot more about she's not apologetic for it, and she doesn't feel like she needs to be, and that's fine. Because, as I said earlier, the time that we start celebrating celebrities for their political views is past. We don't have too many Belafontes. We don't have too many Dick Gregorys anymore. And so we need to start letting people start understanding that our celebrities are human and foolish, just like we are.
I'm surprised we didn't see more folks setting the record straight the way you've done today on this show, which is by saying, first of all, Janet doesn't even live in the U.S., unlikely that she votes in any election. And she is, steeped in Trump ideology because of who her family is. I did see a couple of folks who kind of alluded to that, but not the kind of full-throated, I think, response to that in the way that I had, the way that you've done, which is put it in context, which pretty much makes her statement irrelevant. I mean, it was irrelevant even without that, but it's even more irrelevant. It's even more irrelevant now. You don't want to tell her to shut up and sing, but basically shut up and sing is what, we're kind of saying, right?
I mean, the funniest thing that came out of it for me was that somebody said, now I see why Jermaine and Janet were together all those years ago. Because, Jermaine also did this quick video he posted as an Instagram story where he was walking down the street and saying, I don't understand why black people are following Democrats, right? The Republicans are the way they go. And I'm sure I just messed the poor man's name up. The mogul So Def, what's his name? I can't remember. I'm losing my mind. So it's not Jermaine, but
Jermaine Dupri. Yeah, it is Jermaine Dupri.
Yeah. All right. And so, it's been clear for a long time that celebrities of a certain age have gone way past their remembrances of what it means to be in community. They're more focused on their money. Somebody tried to bring up that Janet was a Jehovah's Witness, right? And while Jehovah's Witnesses have a long history and trajectory of not being involved directly in politics and affairs of the world, I think that also may have something to do with it, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. That was one of the points that I brought up to a lot of folks. We've got to leave it there. Thank you so much, Professor Brock, for setting the record straight on why Janet Jackson probably said what she said and why we shouldn't care about what Janet Jackson thinks about Kamala Harris or the politics of the U.S. Good luck to you, Janet, on your European tour. We still love your music and we still can love you, even though we disagree vehemently with your position on politics. Don't follow Janet Jackson for political news. Follow Areva Martin in real time because you get experts like Andre Brock. Next voice that you hear will be Robin Ayers and the Raw Report right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
Thank you for having me again.
She said she does not see how Mayor Eric Adams can continue to govern. Ocasio-Cortez added, quote, the flood of resignations and vacancies are threatening government function, end quote. She ended her